Coike.
These urchin style baits are all the rage in fishing right now. And it all really originates with this Coike Fullcast and Coike 17 millimeter. But these things are insanely hard to get, and they're $20, $22 retail for one bait. And is it worth it? Obviously, over time, right, we've got other participants, entrants into the market, coming up with some similar items. The question is, are the knockoffs or the followers into the market just as good? Are they junk? Is it worth paying the premium to get the original OG? This isn't really a debate on who was first to market and who was OG and who's copying who. It's more about, are they similar baits, and looking at the dollar per bait versus each other, and which one is the better value, and is there a reason to pay over $20 for something that's less than $10? And then let's run through a couple of the variants. Before you bombard me with all the questions about the dice, right? I'm calling these urchin style baits, the Coike style baits, urchin baits. Dice baits, like the OSP, right? And the Q-bombs, these plastisol baits that have silicone strands with them. To me, yes, they're creepy, crawly, they got appendages, but I don't think these are urchin baits. These are a different category in my mind. We'll save that for a different day. We're really focused on these baits that are elastomer style baits that are all soft plastic, not stranded silicone. So what's in that market in my mind, right, is the original Coikes. These are the Hideup versions. These are the ones that kind of got everything rolling in the market. They're probably the originator from the JDM market, imported by Spro and distributed in the US. This is the Fullcast. This is the 17 millimeter. There's a smaller version that don't have handy, but these are probably the most two popular versions right now. Next up, probably the baits that are most readily available currently are these Hags Prickly Pears. They most commonly come in a 19 millimeter and like a 10 millimeter. It's kind of in between. The biggest side of Hags is kind of in between the Fullcast and the 17 millimeter. So they're not a 1-for-1 in size. Another entrance into this market, I consider the urchin style baits, is the Yamamoto Uni, right? And so this is also a soft elastomer. It's a little bit different shape. I think this one's about 15 millimeters. But I will say there's some other baits coming into the market. Like this is the Missile Baits stupid head fish ball or stupid round fish ball bait that I got at the Classic for $10. And we're starting to see more people pour their own baits in their basements and garages. But this is just a high durometer soft plastic. This does not have elastomer. It does not act the same. We'll kind of compare this one. We're going to get a water tank test out and look at this and compare. So this one actually looks pretty similar in size to the Uni, but the Uni is an elastomer, super stretchy. This is just a high durometer plastic. I have come across some other options like this one, also just a super high durometer plastic, not a stretchy, Z-Man elastomer plastic. But let's get the test tank out and see what these are like. Hopefully I do not regret setting this water tub on top of my laptop. Let's start with the big dog, the Fullcast Coike, which when it first came out, and a lot of the baits that are elastomer style come on like this kind of rod that it sits on, which you kind of want to use that for future storage. The packaging is the most obnoxious for the Hideup Coike, to be honest. So you're going to slide these off the post that they come on. And so the Prickly Pear, the Yamamoto Uni, and the Coike all come on that post, which does leave a pre-molded hole that you can use for rigging. We'll talk about rigging later, but this is that super stretchy, durable material, super high float. It actually was designed as a topwater, and you can see, like, as this thing sits in the water, it just sits there and twitches. And no matter how still you hold this thing, it's always moving. Let's grab the closest size Prickly Pear. We'll go with this nice pink one in Brazos Don. The packaging is a little less obnoxious for the Prickly Pear, but you're going to want to keep it around for storage reasons. We'll touch on that maybe in the future. So to me, maybe a little more stretchy, but maybe it's just the size of it. Maybe it's a touch softer, but still very hard material. Both super high float, both quivering in the water, Both of them, when you hold them out of the water, they basically don't stop moving. That's kind of like, think of them as like a round spherical wacky rig with 100 arms on, with many arms on it, like just shaking in the water. And I think that's honestly how a lot of them are getting fished. The Yamamoto also, this is like a small version, right? So this would be probably closer to the small Coike, a little bit smaller than the this is like a 15 millimeter version. Also floats in the water. Maybe doesn't wiggle quite as much, a little more, but definitely a little more suited for maybe spotted bass, smallmouth, clear water fisheries. The smallest version prickly pear that comes in a 2-pack for $7, which is a pretty good value. Similar super stretchy material, also pretty high float. Does this shaky thing. Here's the Missile Baits fish ball, right? Not elastomer, just a hydrometer. Actually kind of sinks. Definitely a different material. Not saying it won't work, but this is a little bit further away from the original design, and that it's a hydrometer bait like that. Similar with this little guy, this is that other kind of, maybe Temu version of it. That one also kind of slowly sinks. So these kind of high float hydrometer plastisols, definitely not in the mix, or at least I don't think those are like standout versions. Let's grab a hook and kind of see what kind of strength is in these plastics here. Most of these baits are going to get rigged on a treble hook or kind of a larger style gap, right? So you're gonna pierce through it, and we'll just kind of see how we feel these very rugged, tough, like you can put a lot of force on this bait. These are going to stay on hooks pretty well, very durable. They can float these hooks by themselves. Let's move over to the larger 19 millimeter Hags. A little bit softer. So I will say, I do think the Hags is just a touch softer for like putting a hook in. Still would be very, very difficult to rip this hook out. So I will say they're not identical. I'm waiting for my lakes to open, so we're not going to get out and be able to fish these quite yet. I'm not going to say they're the same, but they are pretty similar. And the fact this one is a little bit softer, maybe that's a good thing. Looking at the Yamamoto Uni, I would say putting a hook through this one feels more like the Hags. Also very difficult. You'd be hard pressed to rip a hook out from there. And then the little Hags feels pretty similar. You could actually slide this one through the hook the hole that it is molded on, but very, very tough to put a hook through. Now, let's grab this little kind of plastisol one, and still pretty tough. If you get a good chunk of that, I don't think we're gonna have to worry about ripping that one out either, but it isn't exactly the same style of bait. And now, I think it's called the Stupid Head Fish Ball or something from Missile. And we're starting to see, this is probably what is representative when I'm seeing the people that are like coming out with their old molds and the garage makers and hand pourers. This is probably more similar to what you're going to get. And likewise, I think pretty hard, but what I think these ones is the hook. Once you kind of rock the hook in this thing, pretty easily falls off the hook. So that you don't have that elastomer kind of bounce back. So once you get the hook in there, these become very loose on the hook. So I think from a lasting on your hook, potentially losing a bait, you're probably going to have some kind of a screw lock or a little hook if you really want these, because this is a $10 bait. And your hook's going to work a hole in this, and when you catch a couple fish, I think it's going to be harder to keep these hooked up. So I actually think the Coike at $20 is probably a better value than this is at $10, unless you take extra care with this style bait. For those that have fished these and have actually fished the Coike and the Hags pair, and there's some other baits that are coming out soon, very similar. And as they come out, I'll try to link them down in the description, and I will link where you can possibly get these down in the description. You'll have to check back often because they seem to go out of stock pretty quickly. But I think for the money, I think the Hags is going to be a prime player. Just it's very comparable. Not the same, but does and feels very similar. Now, if you really want that full cast size, this is the only one, the 17 millimeter, but the 19 and some of these options from the Hags seem to be pretty decent. Obviously, they each have their own individual colors and things like that. So if you're not super hung up on the exact size and the exact color, they seem like they have pretty similar action, durability, flotation, action. And I guess the only way to get out there is the next step is to get out and fish these side by side to really know As far as smell, I can't, you know, a lot of JDM baits are super impregnated with like shrimp and funky things like the geek crack. To me, these both just smell like plastic. So I don't think there's anything special about the scent or the plastic in either one of these baits. If you want a little bit more about rigging, here's a video I did about rigging to make these last a little bit longer right here on the Yamamoto Uni. It sinks, it doesn't sink real fast, right? Like a or a wacky rig, right? And then when you get it in there, you can dead stake it or you can